Hello everyone! Welcome to another Tutorial Tuesday premiere. This is going to be a pretty epic one. If this is your first time seeing one of my videos, this is what we call Tutorial Tuesday. Every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central, I come on here and show you some kind of tutorial. And it will be in a premiere where we can interact with each other in the live chat. So if you have fun today and you'd like to see more, please consider subscribing. Also hit that notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a video. With all that being said, let's get to it. I strongly believe that this is the most intricate diamond painting pen I have made thus far. By intricate, I mean the most detailed and the most steps, I would say. So I am sculpting a dragon head right now, and it's going to be the diamond painting pen topper. To sculpt the head, I am using my Sculpey ultralight clay, which is just a very lightweight polymer clay. It almost has a marshmallow kind of texture, and I'm using this for the pen topper so it's not top heavy and still comfortable when you're using the diamond painting pen. And after I have the shape of the head sculpted, I am kind of stabbing it with the end of my diamond painting pen, which puts an indent to allow the head here to kind of cap onto the end of the diamond painting pen to be more secure. And then I'm going to bake this ultralight sculpted head here and let it cool completely. Once the head is baked and completely cooled down, you will see that I will be able to insert that diamond painting pen, and you'll see that the head is secure thanks to the indent that we put in the middle of the head. I'm going to set the head off to the side and work on the base of the pen now. For the base of the pen, I took regular translucent Sculpey Primo clay. I rolled it out on the thickest setting of my pasta machine. Then I'm going to take a regular diamond painting pen here and then cut my sheet to the right size to wrap the pen. If you look closely here, once I get to the end where the sides should meet up, if you just kind of press the beginning end into the sheet, you'll see a faint line there, so you'll know exactly where to cut to get the perfect size. Here's where the fun part comes in. So now we are going to add the scales to the base of the pen that we just wrapped there. To do that, I used my Makins texture sheets, and if you go to Hobby Lobby you can find these and you'll see a few different styles. I got the style D, which included the scales. Applying the texture to the pen was pretty challenging, but I found a way to do it. And this is just one way I found to do it. I'm sure there might be an easier way, but I'm still experimenting. I first started to use that wooden skewer there, but it was too flimsy. So I found whatever this random metal thing was. I found it in the kitchen. I have no idea what it is, but I needed something more sturdy, because what we're going to do is hold the texture sheet still and then press down pretty hard and then roll. And make sure you have the texture sheet going the right way before you start rolling the pen. So I'm pressing firmly on both ends and holding the sheet, and go very, very slow or you will get an air bubble in this. Trust me, I sure did get them too. So go very slow, press very firmly. Obviously the more firm you press down when you roll it, the more texture you're going to get in it. So very firm. And now I'm just going to trim off any extras on the ends here. And then we're going to get into some pigment powders. Now before I added the pigment powders, I got my dragon head, and since that's going to be going on the top of the pen, I just took an extra diamond painting pen I had and stuck it on there just to get a kind of an idea of how much I'm going to have to cut off of one end. So I just kind of really eyeballed it, and then I trimmed it off before I applied that pigment powder. Now you may also hear pigment powder be referred to as mica powder. I just call it pigment powder though. The kind that I'm using is called Pearlex. I got it from Hobby Lobby, and this is part of the Series 3 collection. I'm going to be adding the pigment with a loose paintbrush here, and one thing to keep in mind when you're using pigment powders is less is more. So you barely have to dip your paintbrush in there, and then brush lightly to spread it out. Now since I'm doing dragon scales, I took all 4 of these colors here and kind of spread it out throughout the base and then blended them all together. Once the pigment powders are how you like it, then you're going to bake the pen here and just follow the baking instructions that are included on your polymer clay packaging. Now I've let my pen bake and it's completely cooled down. And I noticed while I was working with the pigment powders, they're not coming off very easily, but if you do keep handling this pen before sealing it, the pigment powders do rub off. So set the pen to the side while you're working on sculpting the head until you seal it. So once you seal it at the end, it won't rub off at all. And now here I'm just making sure that I did the right distance for the head, and that's going to be the shape of the pen. So I'm going to set this part to the side. Yeah, you can see it's starting to rub off a little bit, not too much, but so we're just going to set that off to the side here, and we're going to work on sculpting the parts of this dragon head. To sculpt the dragon head, I started out by taking an even thin layer of that Sculpey Primo translucent and applied it all over the base of the head that we made with the Sculpey Ultralight. Now it's time for the dragon's facial features. Now to do the dragon's eyes, I decided to use diamonds. These are Diamond Art Club AB purple drills, DMC 126. I thought that would make for an interesting dragon eye. So I started just by lightly pressing it into that base layer that we just made. And you'll see the little dot indentions here. I was just trying to measure where the eyes would be to try to make them as even as I could. Then I'm just going to keep adding more of that translucent clay to give the dragon's facial features definition. Now, before I added the spikes and the features on his head, I wanted to go ahead and put it back on the pin that I'll be attaching it to make sure I make them as long as I want them and that they go with the rest of the pin. So to make sure it stays secure, I like to put some liquid translucent clay. The brand I have is just the regular Sculpey. You can find at Hobby Lobby or Michael's, pretty much any craft store. So then I'm just going to pour a little bit in the hole that we made and then stick the pin back in the same way that we did before. And what this does is the liquid clay on the inside will cure. That way the head won't detach from the pin and it will be really secure. And remember, it is okay to cook raw clay on top of baked clay. So even though we already baked the base of this pen, we can still bake it again. That rhymed, haha. Anyway, so it is okay that the head is raw clay and the base is not. We are still just going to bake the whole thing once we're done. Now I had a tiny section below the head where the head meets the base that did not have clay. So here I'm just taking little strips, little thin snakes of that translucent clay just to fill that tiny little crack that I had. So it's okay if you, at the beginning when you cut off the tip, it is okay if you're off by a little. However, you always want to cut off too much than not enough, because if you cut off too much, you can just fill those gaps with more clay. Okay, so here's one of my most proud moments as a polymer clay sculptor, which I haven't done a ton. I had to improvise to add the scales to the bottom, like to the head. Obviously I can't use a whole texture sheet, right? So I needed that like half circle shape like scales, so I just used a paper clip. And I don't know why, it just made me so proud of myself. But I struggled with that for quite a bit, so I just used a paper clip. I'm sure you could find other like household items with that little shape, but I'm just firmly pressing into this clay to kind of get those same kind of scales to blend in. They do not have to be perfect. Most scales are not completely symmetrical, so I did not worry about like lining them up perfectly or anything. So I did these half circle scales kind of thing just up the base of like his neck, like the very bottom of his head here. So now I'm interested. I used a paper clip to get this scaly shape. What other household items or things that you can easily get to that you think would make a good scale shape, this half circle shape here? A lot of polymer clay texturing can be accomplished by texture sheets, of course, but also by other household items or random things that you can find. So let me know below in the comments what you think could also make this shape I'm going for here. I'm very interested to see what we could all come up with. So now I'm going to take more little chunks of the translucent clay, and I'm going to shape them into little spikes. I'm going to put spikes at the base of the head and on the sides, and of course you can add more spikes than I end up adding or less. This is just completely cosmetic. I wanted to make sure he looked like a dragon and not a crocodile. Although that would be a very pretty crocodile. Just saying. Or a snake. It kind of looks like a snake. But yeah, the spikes made it look more dragony. Now I'm going to take my ballpoint sculpting tools here, and I'm going to just dab in between his eyes to add little tiny scales and more texture to his face. I also add like little lines on where like his eyes are and on his nose, just to add little scales and give his face more scales and definition. For the dragon's mouth, I just took one of those ballpoint sculpting tools and I outlined where I thought his mouth would be. And then I took my X-Acto knife and cut right along that line I made. Once you have all the little details on the head and it's exactly how you want it, then we come back and add the same pigments we added in the base. Same kind of color scheme, just to kind of go with each other. But I do say make sure you have it exactly how you want it, because you won't want to keep reshaping it after the pigments are on it, or you'll just make a mess and just have to keep adding it. Sorry, I keep changing my camera angle here just to make sure that you can kind of see the colors as best as you can. So I'm just adding pigments all throughout and then blending them in. Now I did end up coming back after I added the pigment, and I had to bring my sculpting tool to go alongside the mouth. I just wasn't liking that thin line. I wanted it to be more prominent. So you'll see I'm trying to fill this hole here and make the mouth, more deep so you can see it better. And you'll see, since I'm handling it after the pigment is on it, I do have to add more because it rubbed off. The more you handle it, the more it's gonna rub off before it's sealed. Now once we seal it at the end, again, it won't be coming off after it's sealed, so don't worry about that. But yeah, I thought that mouth looked much better. It just needed it to be more defined on the face. Once the pigments were on the face how I wanted it, it is now time to bake the pen. Again, if you're doing this, just follow the baking instructions on your clay packaging. So we're going to bake it and then let it cool completely, and then we're going to come back and seal the whole pen. Okay, here is the pen after it's cooled, and I'm gonna say up front, it looks like the base of the pen here faded a ton, right? It's the lighting, or it's my wooden desk. I promise you, in person, the colors have not faded. So we're going to seal this now. Remember, don't rub on the base or the head. Like, avoid rubbing as much as possible. Just lightly hold it, and then we're going to be sealing. I'm using the Sculpey Gloss Glaze and just applying the sealant to both the base of the pen and the head, all around it. Just make sure you don't leave chunks of the glaze. It's really easy to do with the textured scales. So I decided to use a paintbrush that had an angle. That way I can get it into those cracks of the scales. So be sure to look for those, because if you do have big chunks of sealant here, it dries really hard and it could end up chipping the pen itself. And usually I will do 2 to 3 layers of sealant, and in between each layer you have to let it dry at least 30 minutes. But since this is a pigment powdered pen, I wanted to make sure I sealed it plenty because I don't want those pigments to ever wear off. So I ended up putting, it was 4 coats of sealant on this. But overall, I really, really love how this pen turned out. And now that I know how to apply the texture to pens, I have so many more ideas after making this one. This is a special ordered pen. If you'd like to speak up, I'm sure they will be at the premiere. Feel free to. But I really appreciate collaborating with this person. I just enjoy learning these new skills with working with the pigments and things like that. So yeah, it definitely has opened some doors to some crazy ideas I have. So as far as anything that I would have done differently, I think that I may have made the head a little bit more narrow, maybe, instead of as wide as it is. Also, for the eyes, I can't believe I didn't think of it before. All you diamond painters know what I'm going to be talking about. I have a few notebooks. I could have used a special shaped drill, and I could have made the eyes bigger. So if I had to make it again, I would probably dip into my special shaped drill stash for the eyes. Also, if I were to remake this pen, I would consider experimenting with the black pigment powder to do some shadowing and shading, like where the mouth line is. I could put black pigment powder in there, and then maybe under his, what do you want to call that thing, an eyebrow? Just to add some shadowing. I did not do it this time because I've only used the pigment powder for a couple things. I'm still getting used to it, and I definitely didn't want to ruin my light colored scheme here because this pen was a lot of work. But trust me, I'm not complaining. This was so much fun. This pen has the most tiny details in it than any other pen I've ever made. It is so beautiful. I think this is my proudest diamond painting pen I've ever made. Other than that, I think it turned out pretty good, if I do say so myself. I really hope the person I made it for likes it. So, with all that being said, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you're here for the premiere, thanks for being here. You all rock. If you're watching it on the replay, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to hit that like button if you had a good time, and please subscribe if you haven't already. Thank you all so much for all of your support, and yeah, until next time, bye everyone!